everyone. Welcome to the Catching Up with Cope podcast. Cope is the Coalition of Parents in Esports, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides programs and scholarships to empower youth, parents, and educators to utilize gaming to build confidence, curiosity, community, and careers. I'm your host, Friday, and today I am here with Panda, also known as Life with Panda. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, happy to be here. It's been a little bit in the works.
It has.
We've been talking about this happening for a little bit now, but I'm glad it's finally happening. I was like, there's nothing that is gonna let me miss this. Like, we were supposed to record this on Tuesday for the people that are listening, and then my internet went out. No joke, like an hour before we were supposed to record.
Crazy.
And so I was like, look, if I have to get a laptop and go to Starbucks and set up in a corner, like I'm gonna be here for this one.
And you know what? We made it work, and I'm so thrilled to have you here. So, just like to start off, who you are and sort of what you do in the industry right now.
So I'm Life with Panda, also known as Matt, more oftenly, honestly, in esports known as Panda. I am a caster, commentator, or host for big, large-scale events like FNCS, most notably Gamers 8 in previous years, and of course, most recently with Cope, the XP League North American Finals. I loved getting involved in a lot of those events too, but we can talk about that more later. But I'm a caster in front of the camera, but behind the scenes, I actually help some organizations here in North Carolina with their social media, content creation, and more. Most recently, I worked with the state of North Carolina, their esports league called Vessel that we're building out right now. And it's actually sponsored by the state of North Carolina. And we're building out this esports league to get gaming into schools all across North Carolina. So really sick program we're building. And I actually connected another company I work with, Power GPU here in North Carolina, both of them together. And we just recently did an activation with AMP. So Kai Sinat, Agent, Phantom, Duke, in New York City. They just moved out to New York City to get into their penthouse. And we set them up with PCs and did a bunch of cool stuff as an activation in New York. So it was really cool experiences, some of the stuff I get to do behind the scenes. But that's not even like what people technically know me for, because I keep a lot of that stuff like
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Wait, that's so cool.
I have a lot of fun, whether I'm on camera or not.
No, absolutely. That's awesome. And we can, I definitely want to get into that a little bit more. I think the first thing that I want to ask you, you've seen this question coming probably from like a mile away, but it's how you got into the industry.
Yeah, of course.
From any angle.
What was that like for you? So before I was in esports, I worked in hospitality and real estate, right? So I started that career with Disney and built up to like a training manager and led a bunch of different departments in hotels. And from there, transitioned to Marriott, and then from Marriott, transitioned to a real estate company in New Jersey and in Manhattan. So I ended up moving to New Jersey, New York, and was working there, and then worked with one other organization in real estate in the corporate office. And COVID hit and shut down the world. And mind you, leading up to that, I'm a massive Fortnite fan, have been since its release. Went to the World Cup just the year prior to COVID.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And COVID hit, and I had streamed a little bit. Okay. But it was mainly actually, funny enough, the stream started so that my wife, who didn't quite move up with me yet to New York, could watch me and the boys play. Oh. So I just literally started stream to her. Yeah. And then it actually kind of grew. It was interesting. It was an unintentional growth, because during the Fortnite, initial Fortnite era, and they were just looking for somebody to attach to. And so it kind of grew a little bit. And then I was making a decent amount of money at that point, and the most money I had made in my life. And so I started giving stuff away. So I gave away PCs, peripherals and stuff to my community. Yeah. And then I got so busy I couldn't do it anymore. But then, mind you, fast forward back to COVID, the world shuts down. We're all working from home. I started streaming again. I was my buddies were like, let's watch FNCS on your stream. So I pulled up FNCS. We were watching grand finals. Ironically enough, and my buddy is like, what is it going to take for you to come back and stream? And I was like, all right, if I get 10 gifted subs this stream, sure, I'll come back and stream. I'll come back and stream. If I get 30, I'll give away a PC. And sure enough, I got 30 within 45 minutes.
Of course you did.
And
of course.
I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna come back and do this. So I actually worked from like 6:30 in the morning till 5 p.m. Took
Oh,
an
wow.
hour and then streamed from 6 to 10 and did that Monday through Saturday and then took Sunday off to spend with my wife. So it was like that was the schedule rotating on when I was streaming in the beginning. And
Wow.
I was doing it. I was actually really starting to enjoy the like technical broadcast aspects of it, but
Yeah.
also I was passionate about Fortnite. So I happened to hire an editor. His name is Brave Edits, and he just happened to work with Monster D Face. And
Mhm.
so he was a commentator in the space. And mind you, up until this point, it was like a pipe dream to be a caster for a video game, right? Like
Yeah.
in my head at least, I never thought it'd be a possibility. So I was like, so we get connected. He's working with me on some content, and I happened to be watching a Monster D Face VOD review because back then that was like his big thing is that
Mhm.
he did like almost daily VOD reviews that he put up on his channel.
Yeah.
And so I was watching it live on my stream, and Brave was like in a call with him or something and said, "Oh, my other client is actually watching you." And so he came into my stream and he saw the broadcast setup that I had because it was a nice camera and nice mic. And
Yeah.
he heard my voice and he followed me and was like, "Hey, if you're interested more in stuff like this, like definitely like connect with me." And
Oh my
so
god.
we ended up started talking. I hung out in his stream for quite some time, and I was hanging out in his chat one day, and somebody asked him about a podcast because he used to host this the Fortnite podcast is what it was called. And somebody was asking about the podcast, and he's like, "I'd love to do it. I just don't have a co-host." And I had been so prevalent in his chat that
Yeah.
somebody said, "Why don't you get Panda on to
Oh my
be your
god.
co-host?" And so
Yeah.
it that spun into me coming on the podcast, which then inevitably through the podcast, he gave
Whoa.
me my first show. And then from my first show to FNCS took 8 months, which is
Wow.
fast if
Yeah, I was
like
gonna
you
say
know anything
that's
about.
not a lot of time.
Yeah, and mind you, I was still working full time in corporate real estate. So I was a director of learning and development too at the same time.
Oh my
So
god.
I was building this esports career that I never knew was possible simultaneously while maintaining a career in corporate real estate.
Yeah.
And it got to a point just before I got FNCS where I was like, this is going too much in a positive direction for me to ignore.
Mhm.
I got to take a risk.
Yeah.
So I saved up a few months worth of like income, so I knew we'd comfortably be able to live just fine. And at the time, being in New York, I was headhunted, so I knew that like if worse came to worse and it just fell flat, I would be able to hop back on LinkedIn real easily and find
Yeah.
another job in what I was doing.
For sure.
And um, so I took the leap, and within 2 months, I did my first DreamHack show, and then that DreamHack show got me onto FNCS as a last minute fill in, and then
Wow.
ultimately rolled into me permanently being on NA West for the duration of West being alive. But then they merged the servers and they changed the way talent rotates in and out, and so I've been on a few times since then. But I'm still technically a part of like the talent rotation pool. It's
I
uh,
see.
yeah, it's a different setup. But Blast doing their thing over there, testing out new stuff, keeping it innovative, keeping it fresh. So I respect
Yeah.
it.
Absolutely. That's crazy. One of the things that I've honestly loved about, you know, the Catching Up with Code podcast so far is just being able to hear everyone's experiences about like how they fell into the industry and like how one like the domino effect, like one thing has started another and there's like this chain reaction of like you getting a job just from, your one thing at DreamHack. Like that's so cool. And I want to
Yeah,
ask specifically because you said that casting was just like this like dream, like you were just like that you never thought was possible. What about what about casting specifically? Like did you was there like anything that you'd ever done before that was like anything from your work in hospitality that lended itself to lead you towards casting?
everything. And that's the
Okay.
funny thing is
Yeah.
so I did corporate like training, right? So
Yeah.
I hosted mass training events. It all started with Disney. So I taught this class that was like prestigious at Disney called Traditions. They only select 50 employees a year in
Oh my
each
god.
location, or well, 50 employees in Orlando, which is where I was stationed at,
Yeah.
and then like less employees across other lines of the business. But 50 employees uh, every 2 years to teach this class, right? And that's out of 77,000 employees, and there's tens of thousands that apply, right, and
Yeah.
try to get this. But it's not only like an application process; you have to be recommended for it. Like it's a whole thing.
Whoa.
And so, I taught that class in front of 100 people, and that was like my. Even though I had like experience doing other like hopping on a mic and DJing and things like that, that experience is what put me like in front of a crowd and
Yeah.
actually creating like a flow to a flow more or less to a show.
Yeah.
And so 100%, the only reason I was able to climb as quickly as I did in casting was because of my background. And
Yeah.
I'm thankful that the like everything has happened and every domino has fell in the way that it did for me in my life, because I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now if the other stuff didn't line up beforehand.
Yeah.
So I'm
Absolutely.
super grateful.
No, that's incredible. I've never heard about I really there was a point in my life where I like wanted to do like the Disney college program and stuff like that. So like I've worked my way around the Disney site and like all their job offers and things like that. But I never knew that like about that course that you
Yeah.
ended up speaking for. Like that's insane. Like out of
Yeah.
all the people.
It's a class for every new hire. It's like a 2-day class when I taught it.
That's crazy.
So it's like the history and values of the company, taking them around the Magic Kingdom, pointing out different like things that is. I don't want to reveal too much because it's like
No, I hear you. Yeah.
stuff to actual Disney, but like giving away like the core values and how to handle guests and
Yeah.
how to keep the magic alive for people.
Yeah. And I mean I can definitely see how all of this translates really well into what you are doing now. And one of the questions, so before I actually get to it, did you say you were DJ'd
Yeah.
before? You'd like, was that just like for funsies?
And so, my dad, growing up, was a DJ,
Yeah.
and I kind of got like a DJ voice. That's where my voice kind of originates from, more or less, is like a
Oh,
DJ voice.
okay.
And so I had the voice because I used to go with him when he would DJ.
Yeah.
And then when I was at Disney, they had a DJ cart that they would pull out. And so like I started using that. And then on the weekends, they had an actual DJ come in. And
Yeah.
I got close with him. And so when I left Disney and I was working at Marriott at the time, I was actually a GM of a hotel in Cape Canaveral where all the rockets used to go off.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's a whole different thing. Like I've literally hosted Elon Musk and like other crazy
Oh,
people
oh my God.
as hotel guests. But yeah, like again, another life. But the DJing I used to do on the weekends
Yeah.
when I left, it was my way of like coming back to the hotel,
Yeah.
the Disney hotel, because I missed that environment,
I
right?
love that.
Which, mind you, I met my wife at that hotel.
Did you
So
really?
yeah, she worked in the same
Oh,
department as me. That's a whole nother story.
oh, that's awesome. No, there's so many layers. It's great. That's so fun. And something that I thought of when you were talking about casting, are there any other sports or esports that you've ever wanted to cast, or like have you ever like thought about
Um, yeah. So, uh, before actually casting, none. It was just
Okay,
Fortnite, right?
I see.
Because being at the World Cup, I just was like, that's sick. Like, I would love to do that, right?
Yeah,
Seeing Monster and Bala and Zeke and Sundown, who now
of
all
course.
are all friends, right? Like,
Yeah,
uh, are like seeing them do that in that
yeah.
moment was like something super cool. Now I've thought about it, and I'm very much under the impression that I have to be passionate about it if I'm going to cast it, right? I
Hmm.
love Fortnite. So for
Yeah,
me to cast another title, I have to be equally as passionate. And
yeah,
so, and I think it's only fair to the audience too that's listening that I am passionate about it. I've
yeah.
done one-off events for other esports titles, just more to help out
Hmm.
events than it is actually go into other titles.
Yeah.
But for me, it really is primarily Fortnite. The only other sport I've ever thought about was boxing because I love
Oh,
boxing.
okay.
And so I thought about going like Misfits was doing their first influencer events, and I got connected with Mams Taylor. He ended up following me on socials.
Hmm.
So I thought there was a potential future of me trying to slip into like influencer boxing commentary.
Yeah,
But it didn't happen.
I hear you.
And then League of Legends most recently. Like I've
Oh,
loved League for as long as I've been playing games. League
yeah,
and Halo would be Halo. I'd still have to consider it, but League I've been playing a lot more recently.
yeah.
Again, and so if there was a game that I could feel comfortable getting into because of the knowledge of the game and things like that, it would be League
Hmm.
of Legends. But also, League is a very, very established esport,
True.
so it would be near impossible to break into it
Mm,
for me. So it's not something I'm going to actively try. But
I
if
hear you.
like if the opportunity came up, I would consider it. Yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely. That makes a
but
lot of
that's it.
sense. Yeah,
Like I love football. It doesn't mean I want to commentate football. Like again, I
yeah,
have to be passionate about it.
yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, passion is everything. I think like
Yeah.
a lot of the times people can very much tell. I think specifically in like the content creation streaming space, when people are passionate, it's very obvious. When people are passionate about what they're doing and what they're creating versus when it's something for another reason. So I completely hear you on that. And then that brings me to one of my like most anticipated questions is what like your process is like
Mhm.
for getting ready to cast or analyze, like what does that look like for you?
You know, it's funny, and I don't talk about this often, but a lot of casters have these intense processes before they get ready for a show. Whether it's like gathering a bunch of information about the event, checking
Yeah.
stats, doing this, doing that. For me, I follow the scene so closely.
Mm.
When it comes to a major event that has all the majority of like the pros that I know, my prep is more um just on the like thinking about like phrases I want to throw in, like than it is actually studying and prepping specific talking points, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, I work better when I'm not scripted.
Mm.
And that's what I've noticed when it comes to casting. So, casting, hosting, anything. And like it's okay to have like structure to what I'm doing, but like overdoing it too much causes me to trip up on things. So,
Mhm.
I actually don't do too much prep work. I just kind of stay prepared in the sense that I'm always following like the store, like socials and watching what the pros are doing. Like
Yeah.
I'm on Twitch all the time. Like I'll have pro streams pulled up while I'm working and doing other things. Like, so I stay relatively connected to the point
Yeah.
that I don't have to like last minute cram and take notes and do some of the stuff that other talent have to. And some talent do the same thing as me. They're super connected and they still do the note taking and preparing. So it's not to say that it's like you have to do it one way or the other. But for me,
Yeah.
what has worked the most is that. But I've also seen other talent who like have set notes, right? Things they
Mhm.
want to talk about, things they want to make
Yeah.
sure they cover. Um, and especially like on the analyst side of things, that's where I guess a little more preparation would come into play. Fortunately, Blast and Esports Engine and all the production companies that have run FNCS for as long as I've been a part of it
Yeah.
are really cool about like connecting you with stats and
Mm.
information, and you build things together
Yeah.
in a way that yes, it takes some prep, but like it's a lot of like give and take. It's not me just searching for clips and doing things and doing everything on my own. Like there's a support system behind a bigger broadcasts like that
Yeah.
that make it easier to prepare if you have to do like an analyst segment or things that are a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think everyone's, like you had said, everyone's process is different to it, which is why I wanted to ask, because I think there's something to be said about, at least like I've experienced, like sometimes just naturally coming upon information, I will remember it better than if I like go out and like it's like the same with like studying. Like half the time the things that I know the most in class are things that we just like briefly talked about that I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's so interesting." But then when it's like I have to sit there and like write everything down that I just read, like my brain doesn't process it the same way. And so getting that flow and having that flow from like, what you're saying come from things that, you just keeping track of everything and like having eyes on things at all times. Like I completely resonate with that. And I hear
Yeah.
you. And that brings me to this idea that, you and I had actually talked about a tiny bit beforehand. The idea of like being like ready for anything thrown your way, and like it almost like reminds me of like media training without like media training. And so like what is that like for you, where you just have to like, is there a level of like it's almost like improvisation where you just have to like if someone says something crazy, you have to respond. But it's like,
Yeah.
how do you even balance like dealing with like a sort of
So
situation that like live?
so funny enough, and this is again speaks to my past and how it like I wouldn't be able to do what I do now without it. I had a lot of like media level training with Disney,
Okay,
right? To
yeah.
the point where there's a few other things that Disney, if those listening know anything about Disney, a legacy award and ambassador were two things like on the docket for me if I had stayed.
Oh wow.
Um, and they're like two big things. And the ambassador piece more specifically, they take you through like celebrity media training. And so like they take their normal media training and kind of like raise it a bar, right?
Yeah.
But I ended up departing the company before that happened. And so fortunately I had had exposure to what this stuff looked like way before esports.
Mm.
And I'm glad that I did because people in esports do not get that.
Yeah.
The expectation is there that you hit these things, but because esports is such an underdeveloped
Mm-hmm.
business, there isn't a lot of media training. There isn't. That's why we
Yeah.
see clicks 4 years ago saying the craziest stuff. You see
Yeah.
like these pros reacting in the ways that they do, and what are truly celebrities in their own right in the esports space, not necessarily understanding the best way to convey different messages because they don't have
Yeah.
that training. They don't have that practice. And it's not something that is just, I think it's more commonly being practiced now than it
Okay.
was 3 years ago.
Definitely.
But from a caster standpoint, even then, like when they bring you into cast, they do it because they watch you and watch that you're professional leading
Yeah.
up to it. And if
Yeah.
you have any tendencies that aren't professional, they won't bring you up.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll stay at whatever level you're at. Right?
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest tips I have, and like people just don't understand it, is like there are casters who I've seen super talents, right? Like phenomenally talented at what they do, but then they harp too much on politics on
Mm.
socials, or they harp on things that could be controversial in any way, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what little or how big controversy can come from a tweet
Yeah.
or the way that they speak publicly.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. A big organization can't take the risk of attaching you to them when you're saying some things that could, again, whether it be super small or super large and controversy level, like they can't take the risk putting you with them. So
Yeah.
and I watched like I've seen it a few times where the again people are super talented, they say some things on socials, and then I literally hear it behind the scenes where they're like, we can't hire this person because
Yeah.
they've done X, Y, and Z. And it's
Yeah.
like, dang, now they're stuck. And it's not like you can tell, like, I mean sometimes I've told people like just to let them know, but
Yeah.
like most of the time they're never gonna find that out, right? Like
Yeah.
most people make these mistakes, and it's not to say like if they knew better they wouldn't have done it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if there was like formal training for this stuff, maybe they would have
Yeah.
acted differently or carried themselves differently. But because it's so underdeveloped, there isn't any kind of formal like step up process in this. It's not like you applied for it and now got it through Indeed, right? Like it is very much they watch you. You have to be professional. You kind of have to have a basic business understanding, and you have to be
Yeah.
good on the mic and camera before they'll even give you a chance.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I even almost like relate that to when people are applying for like, at least I know I've seen this, like internships and things like that these days. Like at
yeah,
least like also in this space specifically, I've had conversations with people where it's like, don't link any of the social media you have if there's something on there that you think we shouldn't like, almost like that sort of stuff. Like someone might have a fully public account, but like with some really controversial stuff on there, but they don't link it in the job application or the internship thing, and like
yeah.
they'll still go through because the company only sees what they put on there, you know what I'm saying? But it's like if
hmm
they give them the opportunity to look for that stuff, like they will. And like there are people who have been turned down from that sort of stuff, or because of things that they've had on their public profiles. And it's like it's really interesting because I actually like I've really never thought too deeply about the fact that there is no media training for especially for like the players and stuff like that. Like I think about
Yeah,
all of the moments that go viral on social media and stuff for, you know, a variety of reasons and things that they've said in competitions and stuff like that. And it's like someone like sticking the middle finger up at like one of the big tournaments. And it's like, yeah, a player on like the baseball field would be like ejected from the game. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that sort of stuff.
And it's funny because that happened in Fortnite. It was literally, it was Cammy and Seti, Queasy Veno, Invitational a few years back. Queasy Veno landed on them last game because they were in second place. They needed to eliminate them to get first.
Yeah.
And so they made the big play. Cammy and Seti ended up eliminating them. And Seti stands up, and the first thing he does is shoots the middle finger across, thinking no one's going to see it, right?
Yeah.
But mind you, this was the winning moment. They knew at that point who had won the tournament.
Yeah.
So, and this is the biggest prize pool we had seen since World Cup. So cameras were on them, and sure enough, someone caught the moment of him flicking off Queasy and Veno there, and it was, it's one of the most viral pictures that has ever gone around in the Fortnite space. And shout out shots by Zax. He's the one that caught it. But it was such a massive moment. But those things, you're right, wouldn't happen in traditional sports. And there's going to be a lot of that. I think, and one of the conversations going around right now in like collegiate and academic esports is they're like, oh, well, high school sports don't pay. So why should high school esports pay out prize pools? And so like, and I'm very invested in collegiate and academic esports as a whole. It's another thing that I'm like super passionate about. And so like that conversation scares me because especially when we're trying to build up esports in schools.
Yeah.
And like what's going to draw eyes more than a prize pool? Like nothing else. You can, if they want to play Fortnite, guess what? They can log into Fortnite and play a tournament that will actually have a prize pool because it's built into the game that way. Do you know what I mean? So, it's just funny enough that that's one of like the things that is going around, but because esports is so young, no one has a true proper process to anything, and everybody's just kind of figuring out as we go.
Exactly.
Which in 10 years it'll be very different. I know, like Full Sail, for example.
Yeah.
Shout out Full Sail.
Shout out.
They have a lot of programs in place that are actually supporting the future of esports.
Yeah.
Like obviously the shoutcasting like courses and like the broadcasting stuff that they're doing.
Yeah, incredible.
Like,
incredible.
And like for anybody listening that doesn't know about Full Sail, you got to look into it.
We did a podcast. Catching Up with Cope did a podcast with Sari. So
really?
go check that one out.
But literally, I was just there. I went there last year for XP League and went there again this year for XP League. And the facilities are just gorgeous.
Top notch,
And when I was young, it was the school I wanted to go to. I just couldn't afford it at the time.
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't grow up in necessarily like upper echelon living. So, and getting into Full Sail, because it is like very much a like, this is your road to Hollywood and your road to like the big leagues.
Yep.
It's a little more expensive than a traditional college. So it's definitely a college I recommend. If that's like the direction people want to go, if anybody's listening that wants that, check out Full Sail. They're the best. And again, they're supporting esports in a way that no other schools really are.
No,
like esports or schools are picking up like teams, but not like actual business degrees and programs and things that are like actually touching on that. So shout out Full Sail.
Yes, no, absolutely. Shout out Full Sail. Sari was on the podcast. It was actually the first episode that we released, and we really went in depth on collegiate esports, specifically like Full Sail and the programs there and you know, what Full Sail Armada looks like. But as someone who is currently involved in collegiate esports at my own school, one of the, you know, big conversations that we're always having, like one of the big conversations in the Twitter space for me is this conversation about what collegiate esports is going to look like and like what it looks like now versus what it looked like then, and you know, changes that have to be made and things on that line. And you know, one of the things that we really frequently talk about is, you know, having programs versus having like programs like business development or management versus like varsity actually like competing for money, you know, because it's like some schools have programs that are really built out, and then like I'm working on building out my school's program, but it's like, you know what I'm saying? There's so much to to take into account, and a lot of convincing that unfortunately needs to be done, like a lot of explanation on what esports is. Like one of my literal tasks was to just come up with like was to start coming up with a definition for what like esports looks like and what esports looks like at Emerson, so that like administration can understand and sort of see what it really
Yeah.
is and the opportunities and that sort of thing. So I completely hear where you are coming from with these conversations, and I think that they're super important. So you had actually mentioned previously
Mhm.
that you work with Vessel. Is that, did
Mhm.
I say that right? Can you tell me
Yeah,
more about
Vessel.
Vessel Esports League,
Yeah.
if that's correct?
Yeah, so it's Vessel. Vessel stands for Varsity Esports STEM League, and
Okay.
so they do not only like a traditional esports league with like Valorant, Fortnite, Smash
Yeah.
Bros, Rocket League, and a ton of other esports titles. Every season, they also do STEM focused stuff, so entrepreneurship, health, and so on. So there's a lot of programs that they've built out, and they actually, funny enough, so they work directly with the state of North Carolina. Like the state of North Carolina gives them funding
That's awesome.
to be able to build out this league in North Carolina. And not only like the goal is to build out these leagues and help like people build careers,
Yeah.
especially in lower income areas.
Mm-hmm.
It's also designed to set up and get esports labs in over 300 schools across North Carolina. So it's like North Carolina, fortunately, where I live,
Yeah.
in the state, they are passionate about esports. It is
Yeah.
like it is a new initiative in the last like few years, but North Carolina is going in on esports. I mean, to the point where they're giving like tax incentives to host events here and so on, which is why we saw the Invitational, we
Yeah.
saw Apex here, we saw COD here, we saw Halo here, we saw a League of Legends here. I mean, we've seen every just about every major esport title make their way to North Carolina in the last few years.
Wow.
So um, it's a really cool, like it's a good spot to be in right now for sure. Then of course I'm like 30 to 40 minutes from Epic, but that's what kind of brought me
There you
initially
go.
to
Yeah.
North Carolina. Um, but no. So what Vessel is doing is like working on the programs, creating this league, giving students an outlet to game and show their families uh, what gaming is, and that gaming is truly
Yeah.
like an actual opportunity for the future. It's just as much as football is or basketball.
Yeah, for
Esports is
sure.
very much prevalent. I mean, it's now going to be an Olympic title, so it's
Yeah.
like
They passed that.
uh,
Yep.
understanding the impact of esports is going to be huge, and so that's another thing. Like I'm big on obviously collegiate and academic esports, but a lot of that stems from my relationship with Cope early on and what I was doing. Funny
Yeah.
enough, and like supporting Cope any way I could. Obviously Shay behind the scenes, Chris, like they're my people, so I would do
Yeah.
anything for them. Um, and the message that Cope is spreading, like that's why I was so quick to like Chris says, hey, we're doing a podcast, sure, like I'll be
Yeah.
there. I'll figure out how to get on
Yeah.
it for sure. Like Cope is a very very special program amongst a lot of other programs that are coming out right now that need the recognition, just similar to what Vessel is, need the recognition to grow and be able to give the message that they need to give. And like it's funny because like Vessel, for example, very much what we're doing works hand in hand with what Cope does,
I was
like
even gonna
teaching
say that one.
parents,
Yeah.
yeah, about
Yeah.
esports, right? And like that's another thing that I'm gonna work with Cope too, because like I'm working on like the marketing side of Vessel,
Hmm.
so I help them on a lot of different things, but helping
Yeah.
them connect with the right people in the industry is a bigger piece of what I do.
Yeah, for
So like
sure.
having Cope present at events, like that's 100% a next step because
Yeah.
parents learning about the impact of esports and that it's not just like, hey, my kid's sitting in front of a computer screen, let me get him off and go tell him to throw a football. Like,
Yeah.
cool, yes, that exercise is important. Like getting
Yeah.
outside, don't get me wrong, but
Of
also
course.
if they are like committed to something and they're passionate about something,
Yeah.
support it. And you never know, like could be the next click sitting in your other room
Exactly.
making what is it? There was a number floating around like $100,000 a month or something crazy, or more than $100,000 a month.
Whoa there.
So
Yeah.
listen,
No,
invest
absolutely.
in your kids if they're passionate about esports.
No, that's amazing to hear. I mean, we appreciate you so much. And, when you started talking about Vessel, I was like, literally in my mind, this sounds exactly like what Cope does. And it's like that message and the way that you value that message is the same way that, I also resonate. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So I totally understand. And I, understand that importance, as someone who didn't even know that this space existed really. Like it was just like, I had played some video games and I knew my brother was super involved in the Fortnite scene and I was like, cool and all, right? But then it's like when I actually started getting in it, I was like, oh, there's a whole world here too that I'm really interested in, like events and like VCT was one of the things that like brought me in initially because it was when Valorant had like just launched and like it was out of beta finally and like all of a sudden there's this like scene developing. Like I knew of gaming, but I didn't know of like esports and all of the opportunities that came with esports. And so, I totally resonate with the idea of just getting the message out there to parents and, to other kids that like this, the support and this is absolutely like a viable career path. I know that the industry is kind of crazy right now. So it's like at any point, like this whole career path thing, but it's like, for the most part, like there are absolutely possibilities. And that's something like career wise that I kind of wanted to ask you about. I know that you do have a YouTube channel. And so there is some content that you put out there. Have you always, because I know you were streaming, but what exactly kind of got you into like the content creation portion of this industry?
So I like to think I can pay attention to any industry or business and figure out what makes it work pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so when I first started streaming, I observed what was working, right?
Yeah.
Content, obviously, in the sense of like streaming, for example, you can't just stream and people show up. Like it's near impossible. It happened in the past. It's never going to happen again, right?
Yeah, that was the beginning.
So yeah, exactly. And so it just doesn't work that way, right? And so it's very much like you have to build content to direct people to your streams. And so for a long time, I was like, when it came to content, um, sometimes I was doing my own content and then I had to step away because like commentary, like even when commentary picked up, I really wanted to focus on that, right?
Yeah.
So I did less content, was more present on socials and did other things, but I wasn't like creating content full time. And then when I stepped away from or when NA West and NA East merged and I came off the broadcast for a bit, I was doing 3 short form videos a day for a little bit, and it was good. But if you don't have the right editor and the like-minded person to like work alongside you to get things done, it becomes very difficult. No matter what the money, like money, anything, right? Like, you could pay someone $1 million if they're not aligned with what you're going to do. Doesn't mean it's going to work out, right? And they could be the best of the best. So, unfortunately, I couldn't. I struggled over the years to find editors that I can work with directly, and then unfortunately, I just don't ever have the time to edit everything myself because I can do it, and I have editing experience, and some of the stuff I've done, I've edited, but like it takes way too much time for me to do it that I could focus on other things, and so I've always been very good about trying to connect with the right people and build those people around me. And so when it comes to my own content and kind of figuring out the flow of that, I've been always been very on and off. And so like right now has been an off period. So I started back with my content recently again, late last year. I was posting videos on Twitter, sitting actually in this chair where I'm sitting right now,
Awesome.
turning on the camera, recording,
Yeah.
and then putting it on Twitter. I didn't put it on YouTube. Like most of the stuff I didn't put on YouTube. I was just putting it on Twitter because my audience is on Twitter. And so those videos were blowing up, right? Especially the first video I ever did was talking about people complaining about prize pools in Fortnite. Because I thought it was the most ridiculous argument. They're like, we need more money in like prizing. And I'm like, okay, you need more than $16 million a year in money.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a good portion of money.
Yeah, that's not how that works. And it's like, and I'm like, okay. And so I made the argument. I was like, okay, cool. Like Epic at one point did one event a week, put all the prizing in that one event. and you liked it, but then you wanted more stuff. Then they spread it across the week. There's multiple events all week long. Now you're complaining there's not enough money in these events. Well, guess what? It's the same amount of money,
Yeah,
but it's now spread up into multiple events. And it's a
exactly.
bit, at the end of the day, it's a business too. Like Epic can't just keep dumping millions and millions of dollars into competitive when
Yeah.
competitive makes up a very small portion of the overall Fortnite audience. And
Yeah.
so I made that argument and like that blew up because pros were interacting with it. I had no joke, Epic employees behind the scenes shooting me DMs like thank you, saying thank you, because obviously they can't say anything, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
uh and so it was like one of those situations where I was defending people, but that content got a little out of hand
Mm.
when because everybody like accused me of essentially building my opinions based off of whatever Epic wanted, right? And so
Interesting.
it kind of spiraled for a little bit. No, it didn't stop me at that point
Yeah.
from creating the content. I still created the content that I wanted to. But then I started picking up content, they're creating content for other people like Power GPU and Vessel. And I also work like this is another thing that no one really knows. I help ESL with their Fortnite stuff.
Oh, wow.
So like their Fortnite channel on TikTok. If you
Yeah.
listen to it, you'll hear my voice in like some of the stuff, and I
Oh, that's crazy.
like script that stuff, voice that stuff over,
Yeah.
formulate it with my editor John behind the scenes. And so I kind of I was really into my own content, even going as far as like creating TikTok content that was like educational
Hmm.
I thought was very reminiscent of like a Reese hub as somebody's gun, and it was
Yeah.
doing well. But then when I picked up the ESL stuff and other people, I was so focused on their content, I had to kind of take a step back from my own. So now I'm in
Yeah.
like one of these off periods, but coming to global, I haven't talked about this too much publicly yet, so I'll share this here. We rented an Airbnb. I actually have to finish the rental today, so I can't forget that. But it's like a 4 bedroom, 4 bathroom house.
Oh my
I
gosh.
got Jacob PR, who is by far like the best caster on the broadcast right now. He
Yeah.
unfortunately isn't like casting globals. So
Hmm.
I was like, dude, come with me and let's make content.
Yeah.
So I'm taking everything like the camera quality, the lights, everything in this room is getting packed up and it's coming with me to Texas and we're going to set it up in the Airbnb and we're going to
Yup.
shoot content, host a live pre and post show. Like we're going to do a bunch of cool stuff that we're working on now. And that's going to be kind of like my launch back into content. I actually spoke to someone today about having them manage my short form content again. So that like I have my editor, my guy, his name is John. I have
Yeah.
him like working on like more of the like other projects that me as a business takes in.
Yeah.
And so now I have another guy that I'm going to bring on that's going to handle the personal stuff. So
Yeah.
like potentially we'll see. So that towards the like latter half of this year and then into next year, the goal is to be back into the flow of content creation and focusing on that again.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many like moving parts to every like it
Yeah.
there's like so many different layers. And so it's so cool to hear about all of the different things that you're doing and that you're going to be getting back into content creation. And I think for me from like an outside perspective, like I don't ever think that like I think a lot of people sometimes assume that like if they stop, then like that's it, and they can't keep making content whenever they like want to pick it back up. But it's like absolutely one of those things where it's like if you can get back into the flow, just like then keep doing that. Like you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like there's other things that you do on top of that. So it's like
Yeah.
it never has to be like the be all end all for you.
Well, and even to add to that, like I strongly believe this. If you have a good personality, anybody can create content and be successful, go viral. It doesn't matter. It's a
Yeah.
formula. It's not like genuinely it's not as hard as people make it out to be. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you have to be willing to sacrifice and put in the work to do it.
Exactly.
And so like a good example of this, right, is even me, and I'll use myself as an example. When I was casting and I was more focused on casting, right? I could have and taken money that I was making and invested it, right, back into
Mm-hmm.
content, but I didn't, right? I got
Yeah.
comfortable at times, right? Especially when I was doing the main stuff.
Yeah.
And so instead of like always taking like the opportunities you have, sometimes you fall to the wayside, and like you shouldn't be discouraged. Those moments will happen, but you also have to come back stronger, right?
Yeah.
So and make sure you understand again what you have to do, because the more breaks you take, the longer your progress is going to take
Is gonna take
before
to
you
get,
actually
yeah.
build a network as a creator versus
Mm-hmm.
just like as a personality. Because technically, like right now, yeah, I'm like a personality in esports. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm like a creator in
The
esports.
creator, yeah.
Um, but like I've worked on content across the board, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
our GPU content, Vessel content. I've worked on Fortnite content. Like if you go
Yeah.
look at their YouTube channel, I've scripted and voiced
Yeah.
over and directed Fortnite content, right? So it's not that I'm not a content creator per se, but for me as a like as an individual in esports, I'm more of a personality than I am a content creator, because I just haven't taken the necessary steps to focus on that me being me. And
Yeah.
so that's what it comes down to. Like people just have to commit to it and be willing and able to put in the time. And if you have a good personality, genuinely, you'll make it. You just
Yeah.
have to make sure you follow the right formula and know what you're doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I totally hear you on that. I think when I kind of first saw this whole space,
Mhm.
it was very much just like, okay, turn on the stream and I'm gonna stream a little bit. And then people were like, granted, it's not something that I do now, but like at that point when people are like, is this something like you really want to do? I was like, I'm not sure. And they were like, because there's a formula if you do want to do it. And I was like, really? I was like, because my entire
Yeah,
background's, was a musical theater major before I switched career paths and
that's
majors,
sick.
things like that, right? Like I was on track. The whole goal was to be Broadway baby. But, then when I sort of
I love
discovered this
Broadway, by the way.
space,
Just a side note.
I'm so glad we can chat Broadway at some point. But my like whole thing was like I actually just like had no idea of what sorts of mechanics really go into streaming, and then and like the content that you make from those streams, and that sometimes it's more important for you to be getting the content out than it is for you to actually be streaming every single night, like that sort of stuff. Like I
Yeah.
was like learning all that for the first time, and I was like, whoa, it really is like a science. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. And then you actually had said something about you being you, and that makes me want to ask about you and your gamer tag and where that came from. So
Yeah.
is there a story, or was it just like
Yeah.
poof?
So my first ever gamer tag was like real Batman with some numbers, right? Which is like
Yup.
crazy. Yeah, that was
Yup.
young panda. That was his gamer tag. And so uh, when I came back to gaming and like actually spending time gaming, I want to say it's like 2017. It was in the Fortnite era, 2017, 2018, right
Yeah.
in the beginning of Fortnite. I bought a PlayStation 4, and my friends were all on PlayStation. At the time, there wasn't cross-platform. Like you had to have the same console. So
Yeah.
I had a PC, but I didn't know I could play with them on PC. That was a whole different thing. And so I bought a PlayStation so I could play with them.
Yeah.
And I had to make a name. And at the time, I had worked a little bit more in business. I understood branding. I was like, in my head, I was like, if anybody was to ever like look at my name, they would think, oh, that's clever, right? That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And so I made life with, and then my initials. So I won't say what my initials are because my last name's not on the internet, but
No, you're good.
life with my initials.
Yeah.
And I made it, sent it, cool. Come to find out, I put it together on the UK Sony website, and like I couldn't log into my US PlayStation because I made a UK Sony account, right?
That's
So
crazy.
I was on the phone with Sony for 4 hours, and they just kept telling me, no, there's nothing we can do. We can't change it. You can't
What?
change a name. You
What?
can't delete it. Like you couldn't
What?
delete it and then have it remade in the US. Like that's not a thing. Now you
What?
can.
Okay.
4 years later, they allowed it, but whatever.
That's actually
um,
insane.
and so yeah, like, and you could look it up. Like Sony literally like blocked people from changing anything about their names. Like it was crazy. And so I had to come up with something different. So I was like, okay, next best thing. Like I'm gonna pick an animal, right? And so I almost picked tiger. So it was
Ooh,
almost
okay.
life with tiger, but
Wow.
that's when I started to have more of like a branding mindset behind it. And I was like, what is like my fashion style, right? Okay, cool. I wear a lot of like white and black. So like, cool, let's go panda. Like, and so it became like in that moment, it was an unintentional business decision to make the
No,
name Life with Panda, and it worked out in the long run.
That's awesome. No, that's so cool. And I think having that like that branding business mindset, there was a course I took this past year. It was called Aesthetic Sensibility. We talked about like our aesthetics and business and stuff like that. So like literally
Mm.
you being like, okay, like what's like a crew, like what's like something about me that like I just do like on it, you know, like it doesn't even have to be like intentional. You know, I like wearing a lot of black too, just because like, you know, like whatever, like looks a good
Yeah.
color for me or whatever. But it's like taking that and then being like, okay, so now I can actually start using this to brand myself and thus Panda as
Was
the
born, yeah.
as the gamer tag. No, that's so awesome. That's so cool. And then I have a couple hot seat questions for you.
All right, I've been ready for this since you mentioned it before.
You're gonna, I know you're expecting some crazy. Okay, the first question is if you think pineapple belongs on pizza.
Yes.
Okay, wow, that was you're thinking.
It's
I
my
love
favorite
it.
pizza.
Is it really?
Bacon pineapple pizza is my favorite pizza that I get from a
Oh.
chain. To be clear, when I'm in New York, I'm not getting pineapple on pizza. It's because I only get cheese and pepperoni because that's just
Heard.
how it goes in New York. But like when I'm
Absolutely.
at home, like if I'm getting Domino's, Pizza Hut, or any of like those chains, it's bacon pineapple pizza. If it's Domino's, it's the pan pizza, the ones that they
Yeah.
do like the specialty ones, and it's well done.
Wow.
That's the secret sauce.
Love
Occasionally
it.
I'll swap pineapple for banana peppers if I'm feeling more like a savory feel,
Savory.
but
I
yeah,
hear you. A
for
thousand.
most of the time it's bacon pineapple.
Okay. No, I love it. You were locked in on that. So then my next question.
Hmm.
You're deserted on an island and you can only bring three things. What are you gonna bring? Logical, not logical, doesn't matter.
Okay, so like by things, I don't want to call my wife a thing, but is it possible to bring my wife?
You could bring your wife.
Okay, I don't. Yeah, not objectifying my wife, but it means
three people items. we can say that.
yeah. Um. So definitely bring my wife. Actually, I don't know if I want my wife stranded on an island. I take that back. So
it's
I
layered.
would
It's a layered
bring.
situation.
Yeah, exactly. Three things on an island. I'd bring uh for sure some kind of like medical kit.
Okay,
Um
smart. That's good.
Knives
Yeah,
and fire starters, like a fire
good.
starting kit.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
if
Love.
I just being prepared.
No, very practical. I love it. And then my next
Obviously
question.
the easy things are like boats and stuff, but like I'm not like
See,
if
the thing is,
I can't be stuck on an island if I brought a boat.
if someone was to ask me that question, I'd be like Diet Coke, probably like a tub of yogurt, and I'm like, I would be like saying like nothing that's like resourceful at all. And so my next question,
Mhm.
love this one. If you could turn any game into an esport, what would it be and why? Example, I would turn Animal Crossing into some sort of esports competition
Yeah.
because I love Animal Crossing, and I would feel like I would, go hard on that one.
For the most part, when it comes to games that I like, they are all esports titles.
Okay.
Um, except maybe like a Zelda
Ooh.
or a Pokemon Go.
Ooh, competitive Pokemon Go. Love that.
Yeah, because like they have other competitive Pokemon games, right? Like all the
Yeah.
other, basically anything else Pokemon is competitive. You got Unite, you have the like Scarlet Violet games; those are
Yeah.
competitive. The card game is competitive. Like
Yeah.
so they have competitive stuff for everything else. But I think like Pokemon Go would probably be, not that I play it as much anymore. I think it'd be the only game that like doesn't already have esports associated
Yeah.
with it that I would probably,
That
I
you
think it'd be
could.
cool to see.
No, absolutely. I think that's awesome. I love that. And then one of my other questions, actually, because you had just said that most of your favorite games are esports, is like favorite video game and then favorite esport, and they can be the same thing.
I mean,
I feel
think,
like I have an idea of what it is, but
yeah, it's easy to say Fortnite.
yeah.
It's the most impactful game for me.
Yeah.
Favorite esport, uh, I would still say Fortnite, but League of Legends is very close, like
Okay.
for me. And
Yeah.
again, it's all biased because like my career is based in Fortnite.
Yeah.
And my passion for Fortnite is like next to none, right? And I'm committed to Fortnite and watching the Fortnite players grow and stuff like that. So naturally, I'm going to lean more towards Fortnite. But LCS, when it comes to like objectively a well put together, beautifully broadcasted and like the content created around it, etc. Like esport, LCS, and League is just like it's untouchable
Yeah,
when it comes to just a quality standpoint. And like other
of
esports should pick
course.
up on what they do well and
Yeah.
try to do the same stuff. Um, but yeah, it's got to be those two, if any.
No, I totally hear you. And that actually, like, this is not a hot seat question. This is just something that I had thought about when you brought this up, is this idea of like seeing the players grow. What's it like to be part of the Fortnite community and to see players and, people just, in the whole production realm, like anyone, like really kind of grow to the next level? Like, what is that like?
I mean, it's incredible. I think people don't take a step back sometimes and look at like not only potential, but like the moments that made the esport great. Like people talk about Booga still to this day, but like Booga
Yeah.
winning World Cup was such like a it was such a monumental moment. Like thinking back to that moment specifically was so special. And the fact that like I was there, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't even a part of esports. I was a fan, like in the
Yeah.
crowd watching that with my wife, my best friend, like, and and I ended up meeting people there at that event that went on to go to my wedding. Like it was literally like it's so
Yeah.
like fun and impactful in so many different ways
Mm-hmm.
that like it's so special to be a part of an esport in that regard, right? And not only that, like I'm connected with these players, right? Not
Yeah.
everyone, of course, and not all players agree with me when I have my takes, right?
Yeah.
But like I very much am talking to some of these pros on a regular basis about things, and like they come to me for advice or like there's one pro, I won't out who it is because I'll say some other stuff about it, but like there's one pro that his dad and I talk pretty regularly because we've been at a lot of in-person events together,
Yeah.
and like literally, like we've had phone conversations randomly just throughout the week. Like he'll call me and be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this, this, and this. Maybe buying an org or doing whatever. Like all this cool stuff." And like watching or building those relationships again is so unique
Mm-hmm.
because you're building friendships and all this stuff in a very special space where people understand what you're doing, and that's not easy to find outside of
Yeah.
esports. That's number one. Number two, but you're also making an impact in a very unique way. Like with that dad, for example, he, his traditional background is acting. Like he's
Wow.
legit like an actor, right?
Yeah.
He was like in like House and a bunch of other stuff,
Wow.
and so really cool personality, but like he didn't understand esports in its entirety at first. And so
Mm-hmm.
like me being able to sit there and have conversations with him and like discuss stuff helped him understand what esports and gaming was. Like and so
Yeah.
that's just one example of the impact like you get to kind of make like as a
Mm-hmm.
talent when you go to these events like dream hacks and stuff, you're like and you don't realize it either as a caster, but people recognize you and they get excited just to
Yeah.
get to talk to you. And like that's
Absolutely.
not something I ever anticipated in a million years.
Yeah.
And so when I go out to these events, if like people see me and I interact with people, it's like I make sure to take the time to like
Yeah.
sit down and talk to people and connect people with the other people too, because like all it takes is that one dude that one event that's like, hey, listen, I'm going to be next up. I'm going to do it, and you believing in them to that for them to then actually go and do it.
Yeah. No,
So
1,000%. Those that's beautiful what you said, because like so much of this industry and like the heart of it always is that community and is that
yeah,
connection that you build with people. And sometimes things can get so crazy and jumbled up that, people and a lot of the times companies can forget that like this community, whether it's one game or another, like we
yeah,
are all here for each other, and like that's sort of idea, and that's why I absolutely resonate with what you said. And that wasn't even a hot seat question. That was me just being like really interested in your take on like what it's like to be part of a community,
yeah,
like the one we're in now, and helping each other out and supporting each other. I think is like so huge.
yeah.
I said this, I think, I had the opportunity to be on the Have Game Will Travel podcast with Full Sail with Bennett last week. I think it was last week.
Mhm.
Yes. And, one of the
I think
things that
I'm going on that next week.
yeah, you are.
I think so. But yeah,
Yeah. But that, like, one of the, like, a question that I answered was about, being in the space. And one of the things that I talked about was like just being kind to each other, because being kind goes a long way, and helping support and help people understand, what's going on in any way, shape, or form, like that sort of like mentor without being a mentor sort of energy is always, I think, so important. And then getting back to the hot seat questions. I had one more, and first I have to preface with if you're allergic to fruit or not.
No, I'm not allergic to anything.
Okay, cool. So, what fruit would you be and why? There's no right answer. It can be for any reason.
Are very anti-inflammatory, so it's good for the body, and I like to think I'm good for the soul. So I'll be a blueberry.
Love it. I'm a huge fan of blueberries, so I'm right there with you. No, but thank you for answering my crazy, wild hot seat questions. To add a little bit of flavor. I was
ready.
There.
Listen, you can ask away.
You literally responded so fast right away when I was like, pineapple belong on pizza. You're like, yes. Like you.
I didn't even let you finish the sentence because I knew what you were gonna ask.
Right. No. But thank you so much for being here, Panda. It was so great to have you on. Where can people find you on socials?
Yeah, primarily on Twitter /X. It's just LifeWPanda on there. It's the best way to keep in touch with me, message me, whatever the case may be. So that's definitely where I'll be at.
Absolutely. And for everyone watching and listening, all Panda socials will be linked below, as well as all of the Cope social media accounts. So find us on Twitter @CopeGG to keep up with our latest news and any updates. And I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.